Hi, welcome back to Burning River Bushcraft. Today we're going to be making a practice bow drill set from lumber store materials. So let's be real clear about this. This is not bushcraft, this is not survival. Making a bow drill set from lumber yard material is really just a way to practice. You can't be making bow drill fires with bone dry material like this thinking that you're master of the woodlands. This is a great way to get your form down, to build a confident set if you're having some difficulty, or sometimes you just burn up all the available material that you've got. So being able to craft a set from the hardware store or a lumber yard is a great way to learn the skills, pass the skills on to someone else, and just get good in your backyard. All right, so the basis of this kit is going to be a piece of cedar. This is a cedar board. This is a 4-inch board by, I don't remember, maybe 6 foot, maybe 8 foot. It was from Lowe's or Home Depot. Again, I don't really remember that much. This is probably about 3/4 of an inch wide. It's about as wide as my thumb. So this piece was cut from a longer board. I just cut this, it's around 10 inches. This is my measurement for my spindle. So that's what I base all my bow drill kits on. So I got that by just going a hand. A hand wasn't quite enough, so I gave it a hand plus 3 fingers through experimentation. But this is what works for me. So I took my 4-inch cedar board and cut it at around 10 inches. Now we're going to use this board and we're going to knock our spindle out of it. So this is a 3/4 inch board. So I am going to try to make a square out of it. So if it's 3/4 inches across, I'm going to go 3 inches across this way, more or less, and just give it a quick pop. And you see how good and soft this stuff is. So this is going to be our spindle. It is roughly 3/4 by 3/4, about 10 inches long. So I'm going to take this square board and I'm going to turn this into an octagon. So I'm going to knock all these edges off. All right, so now this has changed from a square to an octagon. I'm just gonna go ahead and take all these next corners off, and that's gonna make it essentially round. Now, you don't want this thing round like a true broomstick or anything. Little facets and flats along the face of the spindle is going to help the string bite. So don't get carried away with it. But every high mark, I'm gonna shave it down. All right, so this is my spindle. This is a little skinnier than I prefer a spindle to be, but this is the best I've got to work with. So if this was a woodland set, I would discard this and find a longer, bigger diameter spindle. Because this is the board size, this is what I'm gonna have to deal with. So now I'm just looking at this spindle, and this end seems to be a little bit bigger than that end. So I'm gonna put this end into the hearth board, and this end is going to go into my handhold. So on the end it's going to go into my handhold. I'm just going to give it somewhat of a point. All right, so the most common analogy is a used, worn number 2 pencil for the handhold end. So this is going to seat in the bearing block. Now you don't want this sharpened like an arrow point because there's no mass to the wood, and you're just going to crush it when you put pressure on it. Personally, I found out if this angle is too sharp, your spindle's going to bottom out in your bearing block. So I always like to make sure mine is plenty, the shoulder on it is set back far enough. So I want plenty of distance here, because this is going to shoulder out eventually. I'm just delaying the inevitable by giving myself a nice shallow angle on this. So this is the business end. This is going to go into the hearthboard, and the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of sort of round this off. So I'm just going to go along, take the edges off. Now this is sufficient, but I like to get a small point in the middle of it, similar to like an acorn. So a lot like this. So you can see the heartwood where I've left the center and just made myself a little proud center. Now this is going to wear away like within seconds, but what this is going to do is center the spindle up on the hearthboard and allow it to bore its own hole. Alright, so I'm just going to look at the board real quick and decide what areas I don't want to use. We can see this knot here, and this knot goes all the way through. This would probably work. You could probably still make a fire with it, but that's going to be a harder area. So you're going to want to avoid any super hard area that you can ID on your hearthboard, as well as anything that looks like it's starting to go bad. So you're looking for good solid material to work with. Alright, so I'm going to start over here. This is going to be where I'm going to start my row of holes, and I'm going to put my foot on the board here. So keep that in mind. If you're right or left-handed, it's going to depend on your orientation of the board. So my foot's going to go here. I'm going to start in this corner. I'm going to avoid the hard corner in itself. I'm going to go in probably a couple spindles. All right, so as the board is facing me, that's how I'm going to use it. So I'm going to start over in this corner. Like I said, I'm going to come in 1, 2 spindles. Don't necessarily have to, but it's a pretty good habit. Now, to place this first hole, I'm going to go the width of my spindle, so this is even with the board. I'm going to go ahead and make a mark with my knife. So now that I've got this mark with my knife, I'm going to go ahead and round this out a little bit. Make a spot for the spindle to seat in. Now you don't need to go crazy with this and dig through half the board. So I'm going to go ahead and just make sure this is going to seat. Some guys get real crazy pushing on this. It really never helps me. So I just kind of make sure it's seated. So at this point, we're ready to go ahead and work with our handhold and our bow. So for a bearing block or a handhold, you're going to want something with as little friction as possible. A piece of hardwood works, a rock works. What works a whole lot better is some of these commercial style bearing blocks. There's several different styles out there. People make them with bearings. Most of the ones I've got are steel, but they're all fairly similar. I mean, they've got them with belt buckles, but they've all got a pretty common theme here. There's just a dimple of steel that's going to allow it to bear in through there. So something that you're going to be able to use around the house. In this case, this is a ½ teaspoon. This is a little large, but this is pretty close. Now the bearing block is getting just as much heat as the end of the hearth board. So that's why you want to go with a frictionless, but there's still friction there, and these things do heat up. So in no way, shape, or form are you going to be able to hold this in your hand and make a fire. So get over that right now. Some of these metal ones, those things heat up just as bad. I have a leather case for this one that I kind of pad my hand with. Gloves are a good option, you know, tree bark, something like that. I have just a scrap of 2x4 here. This is a cut-off piece. I just batoned it in half real quick. I'm going to go ahead and hollow it out and seat the teaspoon in it. All right, so I've got this hollowed out, and the half teaspoon fits in here well enough. I'm going to go ahead and take the back edges and just kind of round this off, because this is going to sit in my hand. So we're almost ready for a burn-in, and all we need now is a bow. So keeping with the hardware store theme, I've got a piece of PVC here. This is 1/2-inch PVC I just happen to have laying around. I drilled a hole in it on one side, drilled a through hole in it on the bottom. You can get a stick out of the woods, that's completely fine. You want this thing to be armpit to fingertip. I like to go a little bit extra. I like to have a full usable armpit to fingertip length plus my handhold. So I go a little bit more than that. That's just me. So this PVC is nice and lightweight. You can get too big a stick, and then you've just got that much more to hold up and to keep moving. So this actually works out fairly well. It can be arched. A lot of times if I'm using a green piece of wood, I will choose a traditional bow shape because it keeps tension on a little bit better. But you can use a straight bow just as well as a curved bow. So I've got this tied on with just a little bit of slack. I'm not really doing a true Bowdrill video here. This is just how to make the set. But to load this, I'm going to start on the outside. I'm going to tuck the top of the spindle under and pop it down. And I want that nice and tight. Now I can roll this all the way back and capture it. That way the spindle's not flying all over. Hell, it's a lot of newer people to the Bowdrill, myself included. I was throwing spindles all over the place. So you need to have this rolled back to your hand so you can control it until you're ready to use it. So I'll go ahead and burn the set in so I can cut the notch, and then we can get a fire. Okay, so I burned in until I was the full diameter of the spindle. I didn't just barely poke into it, and I also didn't dig halfway through the board. So this is showing me the actual diameter of my spindle. So right now I'm going to go probably about halfway into the black, and I'm going to just make a small divot with my knife blade. Now I'm going to go out just like a pie. So that is about a 45-degree angle. I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. This is a little shallower than what I want, and that is exactly how I want to do it. If you go too deep right away, you are going to be throwing your spindle all over. So right now I'm just going to cut to my stop cuts. So we've got this pie shape radiating out from the middle. I've also got it going out in the ends as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this out. So something like this, that's about what you want to look for, and it's got to radiate out. You can also take the edges of the board, go ahead and knock those off as well. So this looks ready to me. I'm going to go ahead and check my spindle as well. This burnt end here, I'm going to go ahead and just lightly clean that up. Give myself fresh wood to work with. I don't have to get every little bit of it. And then at the top here, you can see I really didn't get much friction. I'm just going to point that up a little bit better. Alright, so with these four components, I've got my hearth and spindle made from a 4-inch cedar board from Home Depot or Lowe's. I've got just a scrap piece of 2x4, and this is a half a teaspoon out of my wife's kitchen. And anything for a bow. In this case, I've got just a piece of 1/2-inch PVC, holes drilled in it with a little bit of bank line. That's going to be the core pieces of your Bowdrill kit. Now you're also going to need a welcome mat or something to catch the ember. I'm just going to go grab a little chip of wood. Sometimes I'll use like my leather case. I'll use my gloves. I'll use a piece of my belt, you know, off like this. So there's tons of options, not at all important. And then bird's nest material. You can make that out of jute twine. I'm going to go over and see if I can find a little bit of bark just to make something real quick. But this is not an instruction video on how to do the Bowdrill. This is just on how to get this kit. So if you're learning, this is going to save you a lot of money as opposed to ordering a pre-made kit. Just follow this video, get yourself some common lumber yard material, and make set after set after set. So as I go through, I can work holes down this whole set. I can spin the board around, work holes all down this set, and then you can start moving on to material found in the wild. But hopefully this helps you get started. Till next time, this has been Jamie Boggs with Burning River Bushcraft. See you soon.